Right, welcome to part 3. So in parts 1 we levelled an uneven surface, ready to put the shed base down. Part 2 we erected the shed itself and got the roof on. And now in part 3 we're going to be reconditioning this old shed, because as you can see it's seen better years. So first thing we're going to do is focus on the exterior, and we have got hold of some shed paint. We found this on deal at B&Q. And basically it's suitable for rough sawn or smooth wood with a 5-year guarantee on it, weatherproofing. The colour match isn't exactly like it shows on the pot itself, so if you can get a tester pot it's probably worth getting one. If not, you're just gonna have to crack on. I've got a very able and beautiful assistant helping me out. So we reckon the wood is actually soaking in a fair bit of this paint, so we reckon we're probably gonna have to do 2 to 3 coats to get it a sufficient cover. So yeah,
it'll be a lot safer because I'm on a...
yeah. So what we've got here, the tin sheets we've got are actually too long for this shed, so we've marked a straight line. We've left a 2-inch overlap of the roof over the wall, because we're going to put 4.5-inch guttering, so then that means the rainwater will run off the end straight into the guttering. So now Irving is up here with a angle grinder and just grinding straight down the middle of the line that we've marked. Right, next thing is where this tin roof was previously fixed. Obviously you've got the existing nail holes, so I'm just using a normal silicone sealant. I've decided to use one that was for a bathroom and kitchen, just because it says it's mold proof and waterproof, so it is a little bit more expensive, but I figure it can't do any harm. So I'm literally just popped it in this glue gun and now just squeezing it in. Okay, so whilst the exterior paint is drying, I'm going to concentrate now on the flooring. So I've swept out in here. Notice as well, we've been doing a bit of filling. We used a wood-based filler to fill any of the holes. Although this is going to be covered with this waterproof Proplex surface protection, it's called, I still thought it was worth just minimising any water coming into the shed by filling those. So bought these sheets from Wicks. They were just under £4 a sheet, and they're slightly too long for the width of this shed. So what I'm going to do is press it into place and then use a Stanley knife to cut down the edge, and then I can get rid of the strip and hopefully get a nice flush finish. Then once I've done that, I can put the flooring on top that I've bought and fix it with screws down onto the existing floor. So I'll show you when I've done that. Okay, so I got all the floor pieces in place. Super lucky, it just fits dead snug. I haven't had to trim down the sides at all. What I did have to do though is just trim the ends. So all I did, I laid down the sheet and then pushed it, and it actually overlapped at the side, so I just pressed it down, got the Stanley knife in and ran it along this way. Again, it's not the best job in the world, and what I should have done was probably scored it higher up, and then I could have pushed it down flush under here. But it's going to be covered with the chipboard in a sec, so should be alright. So this is the board that I've decided to use for the flooring. It was 9mm thick. You can get it up to 18mm thick in Wicks, which is where we purchased it. I've gone for the thinner board because there's already a fairly decent solid floor down in the shed already, and I just wanted something to cover it that's going to help prevent the sort of damp coming through and get a nice even surface. So that's why I chose this board. So I'm going to lay it down. I'll then need to use a circular saw to cut off the end, but I just want to work out the lengths once it's in place. Okay, so I've measured the floor space, and I need to reduce the length of this board. So I'm going to use a circular saw just in order to do that, and I've got a bit of an overhang here of which I can cut. Right, final piece. Not quite as straightforward, because here you've got the actual door frame that protrudes. So what I'm going to do, I've marked out where I need to cut, so I can then slot the floorboard or floor sheet right up flush against this edge here. So just, yeah, a bit of measuring tape and a permanent marker. And then I've swapped tools. I'm going to use this jigsaw, okay, to achieve the cut on this one. If you're going out and buying tools, obviously loads of different brands and different price ranges. I found these Ryobi 1 Plus system tools are so useful and cordless. If you work in an environment where you don't have power, obviously you can charge up your batteries, take them along to wherever you're working and crack on. They have quite a long life for them as well. Okay, so that's the floor in place now with the waterproof sheeting underneath. There's the little recess, so I had to slot it down and then push it in place, and I used a lump of wood together with a hammer just to tap it in place right the way along. And again, you know, I'm not going to get too hung up, it's not completely snug. I can either fill that at a later stage or just leave it as is, to be honest. Okay, now I'm going to screw at different intervals the boards just directly into the original floor base below, and I'm just going to do that right the way around the outside and then up the middle as well, and then I'll tie everything into the floor and get it nice and flat. Not far off finishing this floor now, so I've been using these screws, pretty long ones, but what I found through trial and error is just to hammer them first, just so they're actually set just about ½ centimetre down, and then you can go in with the impact driver. A drill just isn't cutting it because of the thickness that I'm having to go to and the hardness of the wood beneath. And what I've decided to do is basically 3 along the short edge, and then I'm doing about 4 evenly spaced across the long edge. So the floor is now done, and now I'm just putting this Pro-Plex surface protection up on the walls as well, just to stop any sort of rain coming in as best we can through any holes that we haven't managed to fill, and hopefully reduce a bit of draft as well. So the lengths aren't quite long enough to reach all the way up from floor to ceiling, so we've had a bit of a compromise. I've just bored it down ever so slightly, and I've done 3 screws along the top, and then I've done the same at the bottom, 3 screws along the bottom, and then luckily, because this stuff's so thin, you can actually feel where the sort of down beam, if you can call it, I don't know, strut or whatever it's called, piece of timber comes down, so you can actually feel for it. So I've put 4 screws coming down vertically as well. So I'm just going to carry on with that right the way across, and then if I need to cut the end one, I will do with a Stanley knife then. Okay, so I've got all 3 panels in place now. Again, luckily, they already fit sort of widthways. What I have noticed though is because I haven't cut them, I've just left them the width that they are, is where they join and there's not a strut behind, and there's a little bit of play. So what I think I'm going to do is just get some tape, and once all of the pieces is in, is then just basically just tape down those joints, just so they're sort of wind and watertight as well. On this side now, obviously you've got the slope where the roof runs down, so what I'm going to have to do now is basically get it put in place, push it up, and then use a Stanley knife and cut down, much like I did for putting in the Pro-Plex on the floor. So I'm going to focus now on the roof Pro-Plex. The problem is I can attach to the underside of this roof beam here, but there's nothing to attach onto here, and I don't want to go up into the tin to create more holes again to increase sort of water ingress. So what I'm going to do is use these strips of wood. I'm going to attach a strip right the way along there, and then same on the other side, and then I'll be able to screw up through the Pro-Plex into this strip of wood. So I'm basically just using 2 of the strips just to hold it in place, so I can now screw it in. So the strips of wood are in place down each length of the shed. So what I'm going to do now is put the sheeting across. I'm going to attach the underside of that strip, then onto this roof beam, and then onto the underside of that strip just there. So it's not an easy job doing this one on your own. So what I've ended up doing through a bit of trial and error is basically using a strut to keep up one end. I've then used the door this end to keep up the other, and then I stood on the step and then pinned it in the middle, then got it right up to one side and then Stanley knifed, because these lengths are too long for this roof anyway. Stanley knife down the other end, and then I was able to screw in. But yeah, bit of a trial and error, but we got there in the end.